Okay, now that we have learned SQL language, let's jump into practice with uh, building our own table for the app. So I'm going to use Postgres. You got to have Postgres install that, and that should come with the pgAdmin graphical user interface client as well. Looks like that. If you remember, this is the repository we've been using. Web client is where this React application is, and it's basically there's a messages page now, and people can comment here by saying whatever and click comment. Right now, we are loading this data from an external backend, and we're not starting. If you refresh, is not persisted. But basically, all this information will be stored in the database. Now, for that, we need to create a table. Now, this will be a table of messages, so we can call the table messages. Then we got to figure out, okay, what information do we need to keep track of? Well, there's the comment. I'll call it comment, which is the text somebody types. Maybe you want to keep track of when this was created. We can create a column called created at. That's basically a date with a time. And there could be the column for, okay, who created this? So we need a column for the author ID. Remember, we usually never store, if you need to store information about a person, that goes into the users table, for example. But we're keeping track of messages. What we do is we point to the ID of the person in the users table, right? We got a foreign key, and that's going to be the author ID. That would point to the primary key in the users table. And I think that's about it for now for a very basic thing. Of course, you could add more stuff, more columns with time as your feature grows and you add more stuff. And obviously, we need the primary key to uniquely identify each comment. Somebody could write the same message, hello. How do you keep track of who said what, right? The same person could write hello twice. And how do we distinguish between them? Well, we got to have the ID column, the primary key, which is unique, right? Has a unique constraint. So enough to talk, I'm going to use pgAdmin. Let's go. Like I said, when you install it, you might have to set up a password for the interface itself to unlock the thing. And then there's a password for the Postgres. That's the default user row. Now, if you go here, I already have my servers. I don't know if you have one. If you don't have one, right click, register server. Give it a name, like whatever. And then you want to go to connection. Use the default port, default user Postgres. If you have a password, you have to type it here. And I think that's about it. Save, and you should have one of them like that. For example, let me add one more. My server 2. Oh, by the way, sorry. Host name should be localhost or 127.0.0.1. I think my password is necessary. Save it. Expand. Yeah, it's working. There you go. Anyway, I can use any of these. So if I expand that, I should see databases, login group roles, and table spaces. So the databases here are basically the databases. Usually we make a different database for each product and environment. And we have to login or user or roles. So let's not use the Postgres user and not use the Postgres default database. Let's create our own. So typically we'd go here, right click, create login or group role, and give it a name. Let's see, full stack user. I already have one, so I'm going to say 2, okay? Because I did that before. Now, definition, you can give it a password. Make sure you remember that. Dummy password. And privileges, you have to have can login. Otherwise, it won't be able to do anything. So you need that. And that's about it. One nice thing about pgAdmin is if you click the SQL tab, usually at the very end on the right-hand side, it tells you what's actually going to run, because understand that pgAdmin is just a graphical user interface. It's just a front for what's actually doing behind the scenes that is just running SQL queries like we were doing before. So the reason for using pgAdmin is convenience. We can do things with clicks. And this that I just did is basically going to run the create role command with what we wrote there, a login, and here's the password. It doesn't show, but yeah. So if you were to do this manually, you would have to run this command. Okay, save, and that should create a user here. If you ever need to edit that, you can always right-click, properties, and change it accordingly. For example, if I press 3 here instead of 2, I can look at the SQL, and this is the command that it would run to rename that user, alter role, rename to. So if you ever need to find out how to do things in SQL, you can just click in pgAdmin and click SQL here to find out what the command is. And you don't even have to run it. I can click close to cancel. Yes, changes will be lost. Yes. Great. Now let's create a database. Right-click databases, create database, and give it a name. Full underscore stack db2 because I already have db. The owner here, let's choose that user that we created, user2, in my case. Definition, I don't think we care much about these right now. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all. If you click SQL, this is what it would run in the background. Create database with the owner and other stuff. Save it. Now we got a database here. We can expand. And if you go to schemas, expand, public, expand, you can see there's tables here. There's sequences and other stuff. So let's go to tables, expand. There's nothing, no tables. Let's create one. Right click, create. Let's create that table for messages. Messages. By the way I name tables is for Postgres, I follow lowercase. And if I need have multiple words, I put an underscore between them. And I usually like the plural form of words. You're free to use other naming conventions. Maybe if you're doing another implementation of SQL like SQL Server from Microsoft, they like to use Pascal case, which is basically every word has the capital letter, the first letter, and they have no underscore or whatever between the different words. Anyway, owner is going to be full stack user2, and schema can leave public, and click columns tab. And here we can add all the columns. Press plus. We need an ID, right? That's the primary key. Now, the primary key is usually integer. See, here are all the data types. If you ever wonder what data types are for the columns, here's the whole list. And I can type to filter. So it could be integer, or it could be, today people like using big int, which is allows for more values than integer. But for the purposes of this exercise, I would use integer. But there's a catch with this. It doesn't have auto increment. So for the Postgres, what we usually use is serial. Now I notice serial or big serial. Big serial is to create a big int. Serial is basically integer with auto increment using a sequence. Okay, so we choose serial instead of just plain integer. And then you don't want that to be null, and it's primary key, right? And that what the default is being taken care of. We don't have to do anything. By the way, not null means can you have a null value, which is like basically empty, no value, basically no value. This is saying I don't want to allow an empty ID. You always have to have one. And then you can press plus to add more. Maybe you want to comment, which is basically what the user types. It could be varchar, but if you type varchar, it doesn't find it. Why? Because you got to say character varying. And then 255 for length. That's the parentheses of varchar. And if you want to make it not null, do you want to allow empty comments? I wouldn't think you would. So I'm going to say not null. It's not primary key. We don't need default value. And you can keep going. Maybe I want to, when was this created? Okay, created at is usually what we use for the name. Notice I use underscore to separate the words and everything's lowercase. That's my convention. And this would be what's called timestamp with time zone. Okay. This one. I don't need length or anything. Not null, you could, yeah, you can add not null there, sure. We don't want an empty value. Finally, let's add author underscore ID, which is foreign key to the user's ID. Right now we don't have users, so, but let's make believe there is a users table. We can create later if we want. This one would be just integer if the ID of the user's table is an integer. And if you want to always have somebody belong to a comment, you have to put non-null here. Otherwise, you could have comments without an author. And that's it. Let's go advanced. I think we already have primary key here, so the constraint is already added. This is the constraints you can make things unique and other stuff we don't care much about right now. And that's it. If you click SQL, this is the command that would be executed. As you can see, it's create table and public.messages. By the way, there's a namespace. We didn't do much of that, but basically there's a schema called public. That's the default. But even if you remove that, it would work either way. It would be chosen automatically. And like we did before, a definition is one per line. This is not null thing. You always add not null at the end before the comma if you want to prevent any no values. And you see the primary key constraint here saying that the primary key is the ID column. And it's adding the owner here with alter table, change owner. Yeah, so click save and that should run that command. And now we got messages here. If you expand, you'll see we got other stuff, columns. We got constraints, which is the primary key, and other stuff. If you ever need to change the table, right click, and you can choose properties. Often you'll find that it's the last thing, so it's hard to, if you're like scroll down here, it's hard to do it. Like in the middle, it doesn't let you do it. Oh, where is it? Where is it? So I usually either you do like this and it goes up, or you do like this so I can reach it. And there you go, you can change it. And if I do this to comment 2 here, just for the sake of example, I change the name of the column. Click SQL and see author table, rename comment to comment 2, something like that. I'm not going to do it, so close. Okay, so pgAdmin is very nice. You can do many things. Before I move on, I want to show you there's certain tools you can leverage. If you click tools here, there's the PSQL tool, there's the query tool. The PSQL tool is like a command line interface. And if you click that, it's basically like this. It's connected to this database. And you can run SQL commands here. For example, one PSQL command I could use here, \d, and it tells me all the tables and sequences. So I got the messages table here. And then I can do select star from messages, and it will do it. Obviously, there's no rows, right? I can do the insert, right? Insert into messages. Let's see what we got. ID1, right? I think we don't need to say the ID here because it's auto increment. Let's try without the ID. Comment, let's say hello world in quotes. Created at, you can use the current date by saying now, parentheses, that we should take the, it's a function for the date. Author, I'm going to assume there's a user, author1. And yeah. Now it's complaining about syntax. Let's see. Probably the ID. I think if we put default here, I wonder for the ID. No, what's going on? What did I miss? Oh, I forgot something, right? What did I forget? What's the keyword? I always forget it. Every time. Values. That's why. Let's try again without the ID. Ah, still? Let's put default. There you go. Yeah, so this one expected the ID. And to do the auto increment, you can put default and it will pick the next available from the sequence. Basically, the way IDs work is if you notice here on the left-hand side, there's the sequences thing. If you notice going back to messages, click property, just for the sake of it, explaining this. Columns, you see the column ID is now integer instead of serial. And there's now default value, next val. And this is basically for messages sequence. So basically it goes to this, what's called a sequence here. And it takes the next value. Right now, current value is 1, increment 1, blah, blah, blah. The maximum value there. So it keeps taking the next integer in the sequence. Now we can do select star from messages. And there you go. One thing I find really nice about PSQL, I use it a lot. If you find there's too many columns, it's going to be a mess to read. So I like to enabling the vertical mode by saying \x expanded display is on. If I do the same query, by the way, I press up in the keyboard to look up what I did before. It's now like vertical. So much nicer to see if you ever have that problem reading too many columns. Of course, you can also select specific columns to get around that problem. If you want to disable that, go back to original \x. If you ever need trouble and you need to remember the commands on PSQL, \8 will tell you all the, I think these are SQL commands, right? I think there's a help or something. Let me try help. Yeah, there's help. So \8 is for SQL commands and question mark is for PSQL commands, which is basically what the ones / things. And you can press not enter, but space bar to go. And I think let me see, control. It doesn't go back, just space bar, I guess. And I think Q to quit. Yeah, Q to quit. Press Q. Anyway, this is the one we use. \D list tables, views, and sequences. And you can do that with the table name, like \D messages, and it will describe all the columns. So basically, PSQL is like a command line interface to whatever we do through other means, right? If I want to describe the columns, obviously I can expand here in the pgAdmin. I can right-click messages, properties, click columns to visualize them. But basically, it's doing this behind the scenes. Okay, so that's PSQL. If you like that tool, use that. There's another one called Query Tool, which is basically the prettier version of this. If you do Query Tool, you can type the queries here like we did in the previous session, like select star from messages, semicolon, click play or F5, and the result is at the bottom. So it's much nicer here, right? Graphical. And then you can investigate stuff. I can even, I think, add new records if you click add row. I can add number 2, hey there, and you can use now, parentheses. You observe the author. Let's try another person too. And you click this save data changes icon, F6. And now we got a second row. And you see the date became the current date. Basically the date, space, the time, and I think the time zone. My case is, I mean, -4 from the center. Used to be called Greenwich time. Now it's called UTC, right? GMT. I'm Easter time, so that's why it's -4. Yeah, so very powerful. You can delete rows. I think the trash can will delete it, and you have to save it. And you can copy, paste, even other functions here, save results to file. A lot of stuff going on here. I can load a open file if you want an external SQL file that it wrote some queries. It can click here and it will copy and paste basically to this. So we can do insert like we just did graphically, right? Insert into messages, values. Now I don't forget. Let's see. I think if I were to say like comment created at author ID, I don't have to say default. Let me try. Another comment created now. Author, let's put 1. Yeah, this one. Let's see what happens here. Key already exists, violate constraint. Yeah, so it didn't, it didn't work. Let me try ID, a default. Oh, there you go. Now I can do, by the way, all the queries you do, there usually has tabs here at the top. It's kind of hard to see because it's very cramped. But if you click these arrows, you can see if I go back to this previous one, it's PSQL, and this one is the query tool. And there's other stuff here going on, SQL, blah, 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 and so on. Anyway, you can do a select, or another way to select is right-click the table and click View Added Data, and you can select all rows. And that should give you like automatically fill out, select, start, and order by. I didn't talk about order by. Basically, you can order the output by a specific column, and this is ascending. It could be DESC for descending. And there you go. So if you right-click tables here, you can have scripts to do other stuff. If you don't remember, you want to create something, select, insert, update, delete. Like insert will give you a boilerplate already written for you. You just got to fill out these question marks. Likewise, you can try the create script. I think that's to create the table. If I do create, that's pretty much tells you what's the SQL to create this specific table. See create table. And other ones, update, and it's there. So you can never forget how to do SQL because pgAdmin is powerful. If you just click something, it will always refresh your memory about what keywords you have to use. And see the constraint here, you can also properties. This is a unique for the ID and so on. Okay. Yeah, so not much. What else can I tell you about pgAdmin? I really love pgAdmin. So if you're using a different SQL implementation, they have similar programs like MySQL Workbench and other stuff. Like SQL Server has its own Microsoft graphical user interface. So it's not much different, to be honest. They kind of the same. Let's see what other tools we got. You can do the backups and everything here. They got that. I think you got to click database or something. Let me see. Yeah, backup. If you click the database, whoops, what happened? I don't want that out. I don't know if you can see it, but I accidentally moved my thing. Let me reset layout. Reload. There you go. Increase my font size so you can see better. If you click a database, I think the tools backup, you can try that if you need to save or backup the database. And there's other stuff. Okay. Yeah, since we got more time, we can kind of create the users table for the program. If you recall, we kind of had a form here to sign up. We can try to create that as well using pgAdmin. So we got email, password, date of birth. Let's try. So pgAdmin, full stack db2, schemas public, tables, right click, create table, users table, owner is going to be full stack user 2, columns. Okay, we got primary key. Let's do that. ID. serial because we want to add auto increment to integer. It becomes integer later with a default value taking next val from the sequence. Not null and primary key. What else we got for user? Email, right? I think that's character varying, right? Email. Is there email greater length of 255? We gotta do some research. What's the maximum length for email? I don't want it to be null, not primary key. Password. Now the password, usually we don't store the plain password in the database table. What we do is we always encrypt and hash, right? So that if it's ever compromised, they won't have access to the actual plain password, but just the hashed version. That's it's kind of hard to uh, go back because a hash is basically a one-way encryption. You cannot go back. So the only way they could kind of try to do something is if they build like a table of hashes and compare them, something like that. But anyway, we don't have not talking much about security. So be character varying for the hash. If you don't want it to be no. And what else we got? Date of birth, right? What we're gonna call it? Let's call birth dates. This one be just a date, right? No time. I think there's a date. And the format is year, like YY dash month dash day. Not no. So you can pretty much make them not null, or if you want to allow any field to be empty, you take this toggle off. We got biography, which is basically character varying. Biography, character varying. I would say 1024 characters at most, but if you really need unlimited text, you can use text. That's pretty much unlimited. Obviously, in practice, nothing's ever unlimited, but I'll use character varying and keep it at 1024 characters at most. Favorite programming language. Oh, we added a favorite programming. Really long name. I don't know if it's good to have, but that one I'll just use a string, character varying. It could be HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. You look at the form. It's just a silly thing to add. It's not really serious, but we have it here in the form. So 3 choices. Pick one. 255. Yeah, I'm gonna let it be empty and the biography be empty. Favorite color, same thing. It's kind of tedious, right? Favorite color, character varying, 255. What else we got? We got agree to the terms and subscribe to newsletter. We can add maybe terms agreed. This is basically a Boolean, right? True or false? Yes or no. So that's the value Boolean. And you can make here default value if you want to be false. And then we can add newsletter subscribed. It's also Boolean, true or false. And if you want to default, make everybody be false by default, you can put it false here. And all the existing records will take that, or if you don't specify this value, this column, it will take this default. Okay, I think that should be enough. What else we need for users? I'm sure there's a lot more we could add, but I think this is getting too tedious. We already have the constraint for primary key. And here's the SQL that's going to be run. Save it. Now we got a users table. And we can start adding new records. Insert script. I right click and click scripts insert, by the way. And you can just substitute the values here. Let's use default ID, which is the next in the sequence. Email, let's say joe@mail.com. Passwords, it's gonna be a hash. You can, I don't know how to put whatever here. It's gonna be a hash. Uh, Biography, hello, it's me. I forgot the birth date, sorry. Let me take this out. Birthday is basically a date. You can put a string, like 20, like 1980, dash the month, let's say January, dash the day, the first, 01. It's always this format. And then favorite programming language, HTML. Favorite color, red. Terms agreed. Did I agree? Let's say I agreed, true. And I didn't subscribe to the newsletter, so false. And yeah, that's it. Right click, view added data, all rows. I now have this here. And I can scroll. And if I need to change anything, I can go here and I think you can change and okay and press save. Let's say I like green. Okay. And you have to save it. There you go. Okay. Um, there's also things called associations that you can kind of associate. For example, if you notice, I created messages, but I put author IDs, but user two doesn't exist. But you could add some association to check. Okay, uh, there's a users table. This is pointing, referencing user table ID, so you could add that as well. I'm not gonna do much of that, but left as an exercise when you study model SQL. Uh, there are companies who don't use that because of scalability, because it gets so big and they want to avoid, like they have trouble with they have to pretty much split the database into different uh instances and spawn many of them. Usually what happens, you have millions of users accessing the database and it's overloading it. So what they do is they create replicas of the same database. And usually there's one database where you're supposed to write or add information, and the other is just for read information retrieval. So that's all that for scalability if you have a lot of users. But if you're just building a normal app, you don't have to worry about that. Just a small app, not many users. Okay. Yeah, so I think we went really fast. Nothing much to say on that. We're gonna use this tomorrow. Basically connect the front end with the database through a backend server in Express.js. And if you recall, this is the app. And let's focus on messages. Click comment, press here. It's gonna call on the backend we're gonna build. And that backend is just basically gonna make a query. Okay, I'm gonna go and insert into messages, and here are the values. And then once that is complete, the database is gonna say, okay, good, inserted. And then we take that and reply it back to the client here. Hey, you're all good. I was able to create it. And then you can, the next time we refresh, we're gonna see the new comment persisted there because it's gonna ask the backend, hey, I wanna see all the posts. And the backend is gonna ask the database, select a star from messages, and then take that and then direct back to the client. All right. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna call this session.